8 hostages set to be released under the current Gaza ceasefire are dead. Israel says its assessment matches the Hamas list. 33 captives are to be freed under the 6-week truce, with 7 already released. The development comes as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are crossing into northern Gaza for the first time in more than a year. Many are making the journey on foot.
Eyes set on the path leading home. Hundreds of thousands of displaced Gazans walked for hours. They took everything they could carry, knowing that chances are only rubble will be waiting for them in northern Gaza.
I can't describe this feeling. It's a mix of happiness and sadness. We're going back, but we don't have a house there anymore. We will go there anyway and just put up a tent.
You can see with your own eyes. Just look. Words can't really describe what is happening here. This will go down as a historic day. We didn't expect to ever return.
The scene is both terrible and strange. There are so many people, but they're happy despite their suffering. There is happiness within. I feel it too.
Under the conditions of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, the displaced Gazans were allowed to return north after over 15 months of war. The United Nations says more than 200,000 people made their way back on Monday. They say the reconstruction process in Gaza needs to begin immediately due to the extensive damage.
Unfortunately, thousands of people will find their homes completely destroyed. And this is where we need to mobilize humanitarian partners, but also development partners, as soon as possible to rebuild all this.
Hamas, the militant group which carried out the October 7th terror attacks, released 4 hostages on Saturday. And in return, Israel freed more Palestinian detainees. 2 exchanges have been completed so far as part of the 6-week ceasefire, and a third is expected later this week. Meanwhile, these Gazans are hoping that at least in the coming days, war will not dominate their lives.
Well, earlier I asked our correspondent Tania Krämer how much hope there is in Israel and Gaza that this ceasefire will hold.
Well, for now, it appears to be holding, but I think it's also, you know, as you mentioned there in the report at the end, you know, for a few days. I mean, people in Gaza, obviously, they hope that this will move from a temporary ceasefire into something more permanent. But for now, you know, nobody can be sure how the next days and weeks there will play out. I mean, we talked to Palestinians who were able to return now under this agreement, and how important it is for them, you know, to be home, although many of them do not have a home to return to. But they say it's so important, you know, to be back in their neighborhoods, maybe start to rebuild something, although there's a really, really long road ahead. And people, unfortunately, in Gaza have experienced with that how difficult it will be to rebuild, you know, this after this devastating war that we've seen. But it is, for now, still a temporary ceasefire. And I think in Israel, we've seen also growing opposition to this ceasefire, especially from the right and the far right. They have already been opposed to the ceasefire before the agreement was done. But now seeing, you know, Hamas during those handovers of the hostages, basically messaging in a message to Israel, we are still in control. And while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has always said he wants to remove Hamas from power, there's a lot of talk about whether this ceasefire will actually go into the second phase, where both sides still have to negotiate about a permanent ceasefire, but also the release of the remaining hostages then in the second phase of the deal.
Yeah, every phase of that ceasefire is critical at this point. What is the next milestone that both sides have to meet?
Well, I think for Palestinians, they would be looking at, the further withdrawal of the Israeli military from certain parts of Gaza, but also, that more aid is coming in. There are questions about how, Gaza will be rebuilt, what political future there is for Gaza. But right now, I think in Israel, all eyes are on further releases of hostages. There will be actually 2 hostage releases this week. One will be on Thursday. There was a holdup over the weekend that mediators then resolved over the release of a civilian female hostage. She will be released on Thursday. It's expected at least that this will happen on Thursday, along another female soldier and another hostage that still need to be named. But as you also mentioned, Hamas has also released a list now detailing who is still alive of those hostages that will be released in the first phase. Only 18 of them are still alive and 8 are dead. So families have been informed there's some concern about some of their relatives. So in Israel, people are also bracing for some bad news in the coming days.
DW correspondent Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. Thank you. Well, joining us now from Amman in Jordan is Shaina. She's with the relief organisation, the Norwegian Refugee Council. Good to have you with us, Shaina. We've seen glimpses, drone shots of certain city blocks, but I wonder if you can give us a broader sense of the situation in northern Gaza. What are Palestinians returning to there?
Well, many Palestinians are returning home to rubble or to severely damaged homes. An estimated 90% of housing units throughout all of Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. The destruction is just immense. But despite that, people were determined to return home yesterday. We saw tens, hundreds of thousands of people return back to the north, to northern Gaza, and want to find out, what happened to their homes, what happened to their families, what happened to their friends.
In terms of the absolute basics, Shaina, how many people can reasonably expect to have something like running water?
Oh, well, the infrastructure in Gaza has been decimated, so it will take a long time in order to make those repairs to the infrastructure. Of course, humanitarian agencies like the Norwegian Refugee Council have been providing clean water that's trucked to sites throughout Gaza City, and many are also working to expand those operations to North Gaza, where even more devastation has occurred, and the roads are so damaged it makes it incredibly difficult even for humanitarian agencies to bring their trucks in.
Yes, 600 trucks a day is the figure we're hearing at the moment. It seems like quite a lot of aid, at least compared to what was making it through while the attacks were going on. How many trucks would be required to actually give Gazans their daily needs at this point?
Well, I think it's difficult to know, but certainly more than 600 trucks per day. Prior to this escalation in hostilities, around 500 trucks were entering Gaza, both humanitarian and commercial, each working day. And that was before we saw the devastating destruction throughout all of Gaza. So, of course, 600 trucks a day are helping people to finally meet that baseline bare minimum, getting food, water, medicines, clothes, shelter items, but it's going to take a lot more than 600 trucks a day in order for people to get back to any sense of normalcy.
And if you get that increase in the amount of trucks coming through a day, you mentioned the roads earlier, can what's left of Gazan roads actually allow for safe passage of aid into Gaza?
Well, of course, in addition to the trucks of aid, we need to bring in heavy machinery that can help clear the rubble and start the repairs to the infrastructure that's been damaged. But we also need, in addition to that, fuel which will literally fuel our response, which will allow these trucks to move, allow the heavy machinery to work, in order to be able to start clearing the rubble and start making the repairs to the infrastructure.
Shaina, US President Trump has repeated his idea that Gaza should be, in his words, cleared out for a total rebuild to be facilitated. Are there any parties involved, not least the Gazan people themselves, interested in his idea?
Well, I think we saw yesterday with the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who previously lived in Gaza City and North Gaza Governorate, their eagerness to return home. These people were under no illusions that they would find their cities and towns as they left them 15 months ago, but they want to be home. And I think it's clear that the idea of Palestinians leaving Gaza for even a temporary period is a non-starter.
Shaina Loeb with the Norwegian Refugee Council in Amman. Thank you so much.
Thank you.